This is God and Autobiography, the podcast, a dramatic adaptation and continuing discussion of the book God and Autobiography as Told to a Philosopher by Jerry L. Martin. He was a lifelong agnostic, but one day he had an occasion to pray. To his vast surprise, God answered in words. Being a philosopher, he had a lot of questions, and God had a lot to tell him. Episode 206. Welcome to God and Autobiography, the podcast. I'm Scott Langdon, your host, and this week we return to our Life Wisdom Project series with a conversation between Jerry and our dear friend Ajit Dass. Ajit zoomed in from his home in India via the miracles of the internet to exchange thoughts and ideas with Jerry centered around episode 22, I Learn How God Communicates. In this discussion, Jerry and Ajit talk about the implications of God's myriad ways of communicating, and Ajit offers valuable insight on living, with advice from his own lived experience and story. If you'd like to share your story of God, drop us an email at questions@godandautobiography.com. We love hearing from you. Here now is Jerry and Ajit. I hope you enjoy the episode.
Well, good to see you.
Same here.
Yes. Maybe I'll say a little bit up front for our listeners. I like to think of Ajit Das as my ambassador to India, but maybe it's God's ambassador to India, because I'm not just for Jerry. After all, I have communications from the divine to pass on to a larger public, and Ajit is plugged into that project in many ways, not just through God and Autobiography, but in many ways and through lifelong work. And I think, Ajit, one of the messages of this episode, in terms of how we should live our lives, is we should all be ambassadors from God. What did you make of that? What do you think?
Absolutely, the fulfillment that is happening both for God and the rest of the universe, which includes humans. So we are very much hand in hand in this goal of fulfillment through experiences. So I have a couple of quotes that I'd like to read out which I've inferred.
That's good. Yeah. What struck you?
Two main paragraphs is what struck me, is giving literally the purpose of life on earth. So I'll just read them out.
Yeah, why don't you share that with us? Because by now we would all have forgotten.
Yeah.
Episode.
So in the chapter that says, I tell different cultures what they are prepared to hear. Here, there are two paragraphs that really struck me. One of them is where God says, because of the Chinese affinity, I communicated the fine sense of balance and harmony and right proportions, like a moral aesthetic sense, aesthetic in a larger sense that then encompasses the moral and spiritual. That right balance and sense of center and working with the natural flow and understanding oneself rightly in order to contribute correctly to the larger social and natural harmony. And then God goes on another paragraph almost immediately after this.
Yes.
That the universe is something like my body, but it has ethereal as well as gross aspects, just as a human body does. If people misbehave and throw it out of balance, and I am not just talking about ecology here, but more subtle ways of acting out of harmony with the natural order or the way, then you might say that I get a stomach upset. I am, among other things, the source of cosmic order, both physical and more than physical. I need people to help. The world is better because people are in it, since they actualize higher possibilities and are able to articulate the moral order in action, the natural order in intellection, the aesthetic order in appreciation, and so on. They are my partners in this effort, as what you said. So we are all ambassadors of God to arrive at some kind of fulfillment of the universe. So, what I infer from this is that the universe has to move towards balance so that its purpose of actualization and realization through experiences is achieved harmoniously. So I'm again saying to the people who are listening to this episode that you are partners with God. So you need to know how to listen to God and what to do to achieve God's desires.
Well, that's a wonderful summary, Pete. And there's an awful lot in those two paragraphs that you read.
Absolutely.
The harmony, the fittingness, it's moral, it's aesthetic, and the different kinds of balance, and the sense of part of the human job is actualization.
Yes.
That God needs us. We actualize things God can't actualize. God can't paint the Sistine Chapel and build the Taj Mahal and all these
Yes.
things. We have to do those.
Absolutely.
Come up with E equals MC square. God needs all these partners, and he needs them to not be tearing each other apart, right?
Mm-hmm.
But promoting some kind of complex harmony. It's not a simple harmony like the harmony of a single note, but it's
Yes.
a complex harmony that
Yes.
contains some dissonance, as any musical composition does. So it's very complex, and we have to figure out our role. What we're supposed to do. As you just concluded, I think on exactly the right place, Ajit. We have to learn to somehow listen to figure out
Yes.
what
So
is
that's
be your
that's
contribution, what's
yeah.
Jerry's contribution, and Scott Langdon's, and so on.
Mm-hmm. So that's where God, in this very chapter, he tells us how to listen.
Yes.
God says, people must learn to listen, to heed. That requires openness of heart and sensitive attunement to my voice, to my urgings. So we have to keep our hearts open to receive the nudges of God to move towards harmony. But it's only when we act upon the nudges have we heeded the advice. Harmony and balance are achieved by our actions and not just by discussions in drawing rooms.
Yes. There's a lot in that. One thing I was thinking, human beings are very willful. We have our own goals and desires. We have our own beliefs, our own things we want to achieve for our lives. And it may be a lot of ego aggrandizement, who knows what it might be.
Yes.
Money to find beautiful women and so on. And so it's easy, even in the distraction of, Jay, raising a family and your hands are full. You have to calm yourself a little bit. That's one purpose of prayer and meditation, is to calm yourself.
Yes.
As in that passage you just quoted, Ajit, to open your heart. You have to calm yourself a lot in order to open your heart and not just pursue your own goals and worry about your own problems that day, but to calm yourself, open your heart. What does God want of me? And what do we learn here about how we're to do that? How do we find out what God wants of us?
So, as the first two paragraphs that I read out, I infer from that there are three levels of balance to achieve. And one is cosmic balance, the second is moral balance, and the third is physical balance. So, at all these three levels, as you said, it's a very complex frequencies of different types where you have to balance yourself in all of them. So, let's see what actions are needed for cosmic balance, for instance. Reducing one's carbon footprint to prevent climate change on Earth could be one of them, and bring harmony on the planet. So that's one of the many things we can focus on. You can switch off lights, you can switch off heaters and air conditioners that are not required. Use renewable energy or green energy wherever you can. So something really small, but you're acting upon it. And that's when you're going to heat whatever is required.
Well, that's a good point. Something you're drawing from this, Ajit, is it's not just that we're supposed to, like meditate or something and be in a sublime state ourselves. There are things to be done in the world to maintain the harmony, to achieve the harmony, to achieve the actualizations, and each of us on our own situation, because your situation in India is very different from my situation here in the U.S. And we've had different spiritual experiences, different intellectual experiences. You're trained in technology and mathematics and science and so forth. I have a completely different background in philosophy. But we're each called upon to act in our situation and to act in response to what you call the divine nudges, in part, to achieve harmony. So we have some sense of a general orientation, though harmony isn't the whole of the story, though God says here it's an essential part of the story. But we have to follow those divine nudges. And there was going to be a passage I was going to share, and maybe you picked up on this one too, where, how do we know what God wants of us? Well, God says in this section, in this episode, I communicate through prayer, through dreams, through insights that seem like one's own thought. So, you have a kind of epiphany, or a light bulb goes on in your mind, and that can be God, hey, lighting up something for you. And through visions and intimations and intuitions, it can come in all these different ways. And that's where you go back to kind of paying attention, having an open heart and an open mind. It has to be an open mind. If you dismiss things because you've got a rigid set of beliefs, then you're not listening to God, you're listening to yourself. You're looking at your own mirror of beliefs and thinking how beautiful they are. But you need to learn to relax that self-assertion. And well, again, people must, I think maybe you quoted this, people must learn to listen, to heed. And that's the spiritual attunement. And this is God's frustration. God explains at one point, maybe it was the previous episode, but God does not work in the world like a sculptor on clay. As if the world is a passive substance and God just then manipulates it however God wants to. But God works through people. It's a complex world.
Absolutely.
God works through us, and if He wants something done, we're going to have to do it. on this level of reality, we're going to have to do it.
Which you also did when you were commanded to write a book.
Yes, I was told to write a book. I found it embarrassing. I asked, can I publish it anonymously? Because nobody talks to God. We're 21st century people. But, well, this is my experience, and I was told to publish it. Okay, I did that. And God said, no, it can't be anonymous. It's got to be an actual person, after all, standing behind the experience. So I report the experience. But, yeah, we all have God talks here, maybe I can't remember if you read it, that there's a kind of division of labor.
Yeah, yeah.
The different cultures, the different religions,
Yes.
the different
Yes.
individuals. You're a different person than I am.
So,
So you have your own assignments. I have mine assignments. And
yes.
we each need to pay attention to, well, what is my assignment? That's the
So
question for us.
it brings me to the second balance that needs to be achieved is the moral balance. So the one thing that everyone needs to believe is that yours is not the only way, but just another way. And God says in this chapter that the total revelation would be more than any single individual or culture could bear or well act on. So there's a kind of division of labor, as you were saying. So God gives different cultures, different messages and directions for fulfillment because everyone cannot do everything at the same time. So there's this kind of division of labor for fulfillment, as God implies in the book. So we need to love one another because each one is contributing towards the fulfillment of the universe, of which all of us are a part. And differences should not divide and cause hate, which we see these days in the world. So that brings me, interestingly, the book Theology Without Walls, orchestrated by God through you, Jerry, is
Yes, I
an
was just
example of an action for different religions to appreciate their commonalities and differences. And as you write in Theology Without Walls, ultimate reality is trans-religious. So we need
I
to
have to
get
take
this moral balance as well.
one lead in right at the beginning, I believe, of this episode. God is explaining why did the message of harmony come to the Chinese? That's not the message to the ancient people of Israel, for example, or to various
Yes.
other cultures.
Yes.
But it came to, well, the Chinese had an affinity for this, a kind of cultural
Correct.
affinity. They had a certain kind of aesthetic sense. One sees it in any of the kind of art or anything one looks at. And a very ancient culture, in part because they were bounded by mountains and so forth. And so that basic culture went on for thousands of years within that space. I'm simplifying the history, obviously, but that there's something true to that. And the Chinese language goes all the way back to the earliest inscriptions. And so they've shared a language all that time, at least a written language. And they had a sense of harmony and balance and so on. And part of the story of God and Autobiography is it's a self-discovery for God. People react to the Chinese noticed God is kind of cosmic harmony. And God kind of, oh yeah, notices I'm not just a lawgiver, as for the ancient people of Israel, for example, the Ten Commandments, that's one aspect of the divine, but that's not the totality. There's also God is cosmic harmony. And the Chinese picked up on that. And now he's saying this is part of the trans-religious move of Theology Without Walls. He says every culture can benefit from that. They discovered it, they articulated it in exquisite ways, but now we can all read the Chinese classics and so forth, or study those traditions and benefit. And of course, the Chinese can benefit from the other traditions. So there's this mutual enhancement of understanding, deepening, broadening of understanding. And as you're stressing, I think here, Ajit, mutual appreciation, mutual respect and appreciation, and ability to, you might say, get along, not only get along, but produce something more.
Absolutely.
In our interactions.
Absolutely.
So you were looking at the levels of harmony, and was the first physical?
The first was cosmic, then the moral, and the third is the physical. So unless there's physical balance, you can't act upon anything. There has to be some physical. You're in the physical world, and if you're physically imbalanced, how are you going to act upon God's guidance? So humans on the physical plane have a mind-body interaction of a very high order. And therefore, both the mind and the body have to be addressed for achieving balance and actualizing higher possibilities, as God says. So let's look at the 5 attitudes I think one should imbibe to keep the mind balanced, which I have used myself. And it's been my experience to keep myself balanced.
Yes.
So first is acceptance. And the second is love. The third is cheerfulness. The fourth is gratitude. And the fifth is blessing.
Okay, explain those as you go along. Those are arresting words.
Coming to the first one, acceptance. So
Acceptance.
Accept others instead of reacting to their behavior, because reactions put you out of kilter. So that's the first advice. And on love, the advice is love unconditionally, because conditions and expectations throw you off balance when not met. So the third one is cheerfulness. We all know cheerfulness will never get you out of balance.
Well, that's true. There's some good self-help book, I believe, that someone shared with me years ago, Learned Optimism, and that's close to cheerfulness, that you get more done and in a more productive and satisfied way if you approach it with some degree. Hey, I can do this, or this is all good. I'm enjoying this. I'm lucky to be here, able to do this. That's maybe one part of cheerfulness.
And bring some humor into your life, even into your workplace.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. There's nothing as wonderful as something to laugh as laughing.
Yeah. And so then the fourth is gratitude. And gratitude will help others not to curse you for being ungrateful. So this is another interesting way of putting it. Well,
gratitude always seems to me awfully important. I almost never pray for something for myself. If a friend asks me to pray for them, I do pray for that thing for them. But my prayers are, Lord, what do you want me to do? And frequently during the day also, even more, is gratitude. I just, it's wonderful just to be alive and not in pain.
Absolutely.
Just to be alive and not in pain. You're happy. My dad at the age of 96 was happy to wake up each morning. Hey, I'm still alive. And,
absolutely.
And that's a wonderful thing.
Especially
all these other pleasures and beauties and possibilities and fascinating things radiate out of that moment of, hey, I'm conscious, I'm alive, and I'm here, and
especially after COVID.
Yes.
We've all faced COVID, and a lot of people have gone, and it's amazing that all of us, two of us, are alive.
Yes. And that's a great blessing. You can't take these things for granted. They're not automatic. They happen, and it's good to pause and to be grateful. And then you enhance the very experience by being grateful for it. So gratitude is an important one. That was number 4, I guess.
Yes, and 5 is blessing. So blessing is an energy that
Ah,
creates balance, whereas the opposite, cursing, we all
ah,
know, is an energy that disturbs peace.
yes, yes,
So the advice is even bless your enemies. Let good energies go out. It's going to balance you and those around you.
yes, yes. I often conclude a little letter or note or email to a friend with bless you,
Mhm.
because that's kind of how I probably said it to you, Ajit, bless you.
Yes, yes, I
That's
noticed.
how I feel. And I don't know quite what it means. I'm blessing you, God, wanting God to bless you, but it's an expression of a feeling
Absolutely.
of wanting you to also live, you might say, a blessed life and enjoy
Absolutely.
the blessings of life. And so, anyway, I find that's natural. It's somehow related to gratitude. You're thankful for things for yourself. You want those good things for others.
Very correct. So now we come to the balance of the body. So
Yes,
the body to remain in balance, there are at least three major factors, which we all know about, and I'm just going to reiterate that. One of them is exercise. Number two is diet. And number three is sleep. Very simple, three things. So, exercise for a minimum of 25 minutes daily is what most researchers have come up for good health. So, that's one thing. Diets with protein, fruits, dry fruits, vegetables, and seeds have been found to be good for human health.
yes.
And we all know sleep for 8 hours a day is known to repair the daily wear and tear of the human body, and it gives you a spring in your step every morning.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's how you keep your body and mind balanced to do God's work every day, actualize yourself, and thereby actualize the whole universe.
Yes, yes, yes. Do you have a way of preparing for sleep? Do you think is
Not
there a method for helping you sleep well, for going to
so
sleep easily?
those five things for the mind. If you've done that the whole day, if you've been accepting, loving, cheerful, had gratitude, and blessed somebody, you're going to be very happy when you go to sleep. It will just drop
That's
out. I'm
that's
telling you, that's my experience.
yeah, you're not going to be restless if
You're
you've
not
done
going to
those
be
things.
there.
Thank you for listening to God and Autobiography, the podcast. Subscribe for free today wherever you listen to your podcasts and hear a new episode every week. You can hear the complete dramatic adaptation of God and Autobiography as Told to a Philosopher by Jerry L. Martin by beginning with episode 1 of our podcast and listening through its conclusion with episode 44. You can read the original true story in the book from which this podcast is adapted, God and Autobiography as Told to a Philosopher, available now at Amazon.com and always at godandautobiography.com. Pick up your own copy today. If you have any questions about this or any other episode, please email us at questions@godandautobiography.com and experience the world from God's perspective, as it was told to a philosopher. This is Scott Langdon. I'll see you next time.